Before the cameras turn on, before the statements are read, and before the world speaks about justice and human rights, there is a truth rarely told. A truth buried under silence, ignored by headlines, and absent from international concern. This is not a story of politics, not a conflict between states, not a war with two sides. This is a story of people whose only crime is their faith. Tonight, we break the silence. Welcome to the TCTT channel, where truth is spoken clearly. In a world overflowing with slogans, where microphones are raised and statements are issued in the name of human rights, there exists a people who are being slaughtered in silence. Not because they carried weapons, not because they declared war, not because they rebelled against a state or threatened its borders. They are hunted, displaced, and killed for one reason only: their faith, because they are Christian. Their blood does not make headlines. Their churches burn without breaking the news cycle. Their children are buried without international outrage. While the world debates values, they pay the price. While speeches are delivered, they are erased. This is not a tragedy of war. This is not collateral damage. This is persecution, clear, systematic, and ongoing. And the greatest crime of all is not just the killing, but the silence that surrounds it. Christianity in Nigeria. It is not merely a religion that is practiced, nor a ritual that is performed, nor a label written on an identity card. Christianity here is a story of resilience, a memory written in blood, a prayer whispered while fear stands at the door. Christianity entered Nigerian land centuries ago, not on the back of a tank, not under the protection of weapons, but through the word, through the school, through the hospital, and through people who chose to serve before they ever demanded anything in return. It grew and took root, deep in the south and the central regions, becoming an identity for millions, building, educating, healing, and planting life in a land long familiar with pain. Nigeria is not just a country on Africa's map. It is a religious fault line. A nation split between a predominantly Muslim north, rooted in deep Islamic history, and a largely Christian south, where Christianity became central to identity, education, and social life. In the north, Christianity has not always been seen as a personal faith. In the rhetoric of extremists, it is framed as a cultural invasion, a symbol of the West, of political power, and of social change they fear and resist. From that fear, violence was born. And from violence, persecution followed. Churches burned. Pastors assassinated. Christian villages erased from the map. Families forced to flee or to abandon their faith simply to survive. Groups like Boko Haram did not stop at rejecting education or the state. They made Christians a primary target, not because they carried weapons, not because they posed a threat, but simply because they believed. Too often, the Nigerian Christian stands alone, caught between armed religious extremism, bloody conflicts over land and identity, and a fragile state unable or unwilling to protect all its citizens equally. And this raises a question often repeated in headlines and rhetoric. Is Nigeria the largest Christian population within the so-called Islamic world? But the more honest and more urgent question is this: is Nigeria even an Islamic state at all? Or is it a deeply plural nation, violently reduced to a religious binary, while the reality on the ground is far more complex and far more deadly? For more, we are joined from Nigeria by Mr. Etuje Thomas Ama, General Supervisor, Cry of People Respond Team. Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas. Can you describe what daily life looks like for you and your family where you live in Nigeria today?
Of course, yes. In Nigeria today, especially in the northern parts of Nigeria, where I am now, in Maiduguri, Borno State, the capital of Borno State here in Nigeria, the life of Christians is really very, very difficult. Christians are facing tough times in Nigeria. You know, Christians are being deprived of their right to worship their God. And with this, there are a lot of other things like segregation. Christians are looked upon as people who have no rights. In fact, even when it comes to sharing of things that has to do with the government, they are always biased. And so right now, life of Christians in Nigeria, especially here in the north, is a very difficult one. They are passing through difficult situations. And so it is not easy with Christians. Looking at the current situation where the prices of commodities are skyrocketing, Christians are not getting it easy. So if you ask me, I would tell you that Christians in Nigeria, especially here in the northern parts, that is Maiduguri, Borno State and its environs, in fact, Christians are really passing through hell. They are passing through a lot of suffering. They are passing through a lot of persecution. Now, this is what it is.
How has life changed in your community since the violence began?
Really, life has really changed in the sense that since these terrorists came into action around the year 2008, they began killing, molesting, and making Christians to abandon their own homeland and flee. Most of the Christians have come into the cities, and it is not easy. There is no way to even accommodate many of them, and so they are forced to live in concentrated IDP camps. And so the violence itself has been so great and enormous. Many Christians, thousands of Christians have died. In fact, millions, not even thousands, millions. And hundreds of thousands have left their motherland and they have fled to other places that is not actually their villages or maybe local governments. And so this has been the lifestyle of Christians. Sometimes they move from place to place. Sometimes they will pursue them and kill them and persecute them. And so they will flee. So some Christians have been moving from place to place. So this has been the lifestyle of most of the Christians since the violence began.
Do you feel safe leaving your home? And what are people most afraid of right now?
Yes, in Nigeria now, before you even think of leaving your home, you must first of all pray. If at all God will protect you to come back. It's as easy as that. Or before you even step to a nearby shop to buy something, you must watch carefully to see who is coming behind you or before you, because Nigeria is not safe. So, for anyone to live here in Nigeria now, especially in the north where I am living right now, I'm just coming back from church now. It is something that you have to be very, very observant. You have to be very, very observant because there is this fear that the next person coming behind you can be a terrorist, can be a killer, or can even be an insider. So, to live here in Nigeria is an issue of you must pray before you go out. If not, anything can happen. That is it.
Have you personally witnessed or heard about attacks that specifically targeted Christians?
Yes. With many years I have been living in this place, we have seen it and we have heard it and we have witnessed it with our own eyes. How that people had slept, gone to sleep, and the next morning you wake up, you find hundreds of corpses. These terrorists, they go house to house, especially Christians' houses that they have marked, and they will come in the heart of the night and they will massacre all the Christians, including children, in that particular house. We have seen it. It's just that the media cannot accept us to be sending some of these ugly pictures. Yes, it's something that I have witnessed myself. I have witnessed it even in front of my own compound that somebody was shot dead. This person did not do anything, but they just, seek him because he is a Christian and he is doing very well. So it's something that we have seen. We have seen blood. We have seen people murdered in their cold blood. We have seen families destroyed completely. So what we have seen here, it is only God that knows it.
What happens to churches and Christian communities during these attacks?
During these attacks, honestly, of a truth, most of the churches are burned down to ashes. Sometimes some resident pastors that live in churches are killed together with their families. And most of times, if there are girls or females, they will kidnap these girls and females and take them away. In fact, many churches have been burned down rather, and many Christian communities have been, you know, they don't actually have anywhere to go. They don't have, like, they have surrendered their lives to whether we die or we live. Because where will you go? If you say you want to go from one local government to another, you may fall into the terrorist hands. And so, with this, many Christians have left the localities and they are now living in some IDP camps that they think that is the only way, that's the only place that is safe for them. So, this is the situation of Christians now, and thousands of churches have been burned down. Thousands, thousands, many. So, this is it.
Has anyone you personally know been killed, displaced, or forced to flee because of their Christian faith?
My dear, it is not only one, it is not even 10, many hundreds of people I know very well, especially some of these people that came from the east, west, that have been living in the cities who are Christians. We have buried many of them. We have buried thousands of them. What are we talking about? Many Christians have been killed. Many have been forced out of their places. For example, some of the Igbos that came from the east and they had their businesses set up in the north. Some of them were killed on daily basis. I can remember in the year 2009, 2009, how that almost 3 to 4 corpses of Igbos were flown back home, because Boko Haram terrorists were killing them, saying that these people have come to invade our land and they are doing well, and we are not doing well here. So it has been like this. They will use different things to attribute to these killings, but all they are doing is they are killing and massacring Christians. They want to finish all the Christians, annihilate all the Christians. So it is like that.
Okay, Mr. Thomas. Can you tell us more? How are children being affected by this violence and constant fear?
Of a truth, the terrorism in Nigeria indiscriminately they kill and destroy everyone. Children as well as adults are being killed. Yes, when they come in a particular house and they meet Christians, even the smallest child as old as a day-old baby is killed indiscriminately. They kill everyone. The only people that they may allow are the girls, because some of the girls from the ages of 14 and above, they carry them away and make them their wives. So this is what is happening. But any other child, whether you are a boy, whether you are who, they kill them. And for the older boys, from the ages of maybe 12 and above, some of them, they may ask them to join them forcefully, to join them forcefully. And if they overpower a community, everybody there, if you are to be allowed in that community, you must convert as a Muslim. This is what is happening. So children are also affected as well as adults.
When attacks happen, how do the authorities respond, if at all?
Do you know that most of the times there will be securities at a particular place to guard? Terrorists will come. In fact, before the terrorists will come, you will just see out of a sudden these security people will just leave the place. And the next minute, these terrorists will invade that particular locality and destroy everything, including human lives. And now they will go. So it's like something that they have gang up together with the security and the government. From the look of things, the government cannot say they are ignorant about what is happening. The government is fully involved. We have seen it all. There cannot be any issue of massacre or killing. What the government will just tell you is, we will look into it, but there will be no culprits. And even if there are culprits, they will pardon them. They will just say they have confessed, they have repented. Can terrorists repent from terrorism except through Jesus? So this has been what this is what has been going on. So for you to know that securities are doing nothing, nothing at all, nothing. In fact, some of the security personnel are even found to be part of it. They are even found to be part of it.
Mr. Thomas, based on what you see, what is the hardest part of living under these conditions every day?
In fact, the hardest part of living in north of Nigeria now is the issue of feeding. Feeding. With the rises of prices of commodities on daily basis, also many of the farmers do not go to farms because they are being killed by these Boko Haram terrorists, bandits, Fulani bandits, or Fulani headers. They are being killed in their farms. And so anything we see in the city today is very expensive. So the life of Christians in the north of Nigeria, especially Borno State, is that of food, feeding. People find it difficult to feed. In fact, some people can only eat 1 square meal a day, only once, and then you have to just drink water for the rest of the day. So this is the problem. The greatest challenge is feeding. Feeding millions of people in the camps, thousands of people in one camp to get food that they will eat maybe only once a day. Only once a day. So this has been the greatest challenge of life.
From your perspective on the ground, if the world were listening to you right now, what message would you want to send, Mr. Thomas?
Honestly, of a truth, if the world were to listen to me right now, I would tell the world the plain truth that Christians in Nigeria are going through a genocide. This is a genocide that the Islamic terrorists, the extremists, they want to eliminate all Christians in Nigeria. This has been their agenda. This has been their plan. Many thousands and millions of Christians have been killed without any cause. And so, they are now trying to finalize their plan. But we have a God. God will not accept it. And so, I will boldly stand before the world to tell them that the federal government of Nigeria has a hand in this. Yes, they have a hand in it. They know what they are doing. And so they have tried and they are still trying to completely eradicate and finish all the Christians in Nigeria, especially in the north, especially in Maiduguri, Borno State capital, and other local governments within the state. So this is what I have to say. What is happening in Nigeria is a genocide, Christian genocide. Thank you.
Many thanks to our guest for your honesty and for shedding light on such a critical issue. We appreciate your time and your voice, and we hope to continue this conversation in the future. We now turn our attention to the humanitarian situation in the displacement camps. In this report, we hear a first-hand account from a woman describing the scale of suffering and the loss of livelihoods due to ongoing security threats. Here is the story.
So we are here at the camp. So this is a sister we want to ask about how life has been with them since they came into this camp.
Ba kamar na da yanzu ba ai yanzu kam ba irin wahalan da ba ma gani yanzu amma da muna walwala muna da gonaki mu ba abin da bara mu je mu nima da karfin mu ba ma yanzu ba hanya zaka je noma boko haram ya kashe ka hanya ko ya kama ka ya tafi da kai kuma yanzu ba wani abin da muke ciki.
First of all, I want to introduce myself. I'm John Goma by name, the chairman of IDP Camp Center, Wulari. We have been here since 2014 as a result of the insurgency in Borno State, particularly Goza local government. I'm from Goza local government. Since we have been here, there was no intervention until October 2000. We came here June 2014 until October 2014. We started getting intervention from NGOs like WFP, the World Food Program, Action Against Hunger, DRC. These are the NGOs that we have been getting intervention from them. And then later, 2023, the NGOs were asked to withdraw from the camps to go to local government areas of Borno State. And since then, there was no intervention up to this time. So this is how we have been suffering. We go to farm. 95% of us are from Goza local government, even though There are some people from Adamawa State here, but 95% of us are farmers. We used to go to farm. When we go to farm, before getting a piece of land, we have to pay about 150,000 before getting a piece of land from the community.
A tashi a boko, ‘yan mata ku je ku yi aure, zan maimaita wannan magana a yau.
On the contrary, Nigeria is not a marginal country on the religious map. It is home to one of the largest Christian populations living within regions dominated by an Islamic presence. More than 90 million Christians, not a small minority, but a massive human community, one of the largest in Africa and among the largest in the world. Yet they live inside a deeply divided and highly sensitive religious environment, one that can ignite at any moment. For this reason, Nigerian Christians are not viewed simply as a religious group, but as the largest Christian population living directly on the front line of confrontation with Islamist extremism. The journey of suffering in Nigeria is not a sudden tragedy, nor a passing wave of violence, but a long history of persecution unfolding under decades of international silence. For decades, the wound has remained open. In northern Nigeria, the pain did not erupt overnight. It crept in slowly, year after year, until it became a daily reality. During the 1980s and 1990s, the first sparks appeared. Isolated religious tensions, churches burned here, Christian villages attacked there. People fled, then returned, believing the storm would pass. But it never did. The year 2000 marked a turning point. The announcement of Sharia law in several northern states. From that moment on, Christian faith itself became a sufficient reason for threat. Churches were shut down. Prayers were whispered instead of being raised aloud. Then came 2009, and with it, a name that would change everything. Boko Haram. At that point, persecution was no longer just fear. It became organized terror, bombings without distinction, the kidnapping of pastors, entire Christian villages wiped off the map. From that moment, the question was no longer, will we be persecuted? But the most terrifying question of all, who is next? And here begins the most dangerous chapter. The story of a group that did not stop at rejecting education, did not limit itself to confronting the state, but chose to declare faith itself a crime punishable by death. The terrorist group Boko Haram, founded in 2002, established in northeastern Nigeria as a radical Islamist movement, led by Muhammad Yusuf until his death in 2009. Rejects Western education and promotes extremist interpretations of religion. Turned into an armed insurgency after clashes with Nigerian security forces. Primarily active in northeast Nigeria, especially Borno State. Known for mass killings, suicide bombings, and attacks on civilians. It caused the deaths of more than 35,000 people, most of them Christians. It displaced more than 2 million people. Infamous for abducting women and children, including schoolgirls. It abducted more than 270 schoolgirls from Chibok in 2014. Operations extended to Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. Pledged allegiance to ISIS in 2015, causing internal divisions. Millions displaced and thousands killed across the Lake Chad region. Let us be clear from the outset, without evasion, without ambiguity, and without emotional manipulation. This is not a war between Muslims and Christians. It is not a traditional religious conflict, nor is it an ideological confrontation between neighbors. What is happening in Nigeria is an organized crime, carried out by armed extremist groups against unarmed civilians. People leaving their homes to tend their farms, children heading to school, families entering churches to pray. Not militias, not fighters, not parties to a war. The deliberate conflation of religion with crime is the first victory of terrorism, and the most dangerous service offered to the perpetrator is framing the violence as a religious conflict. The truth is simpler and harsher. There are armed groups that use religion as a slogan, but in reality, they use violence as a tool, fear as a weapon, and impunity as a guarantee. If this were a war of religions, there would be clear front lines. Instead, what we see is this: villages attacked at night, homes set ablaze, and people killed in their sleep. If this were a war, there would be two sides. But here, there is only one side with weapons, and another with prayers, memories, and a fundamental right to life. More dangerous than the killing itself is the normalization of crime. When the world treats massacres as local incidents, or tribal tensions, or complex clashes. No, this is not complex. It is clear. A civilian is killed because he is Christian. A church is burned because it is a church. A village is erased because it has no protection. And in return, no accountability, no serious investigation, no message of deterrence. And here's the question that must be asked out loud. If the victim were not a poor African Christian, would the silence still persist? Condemning a crime does not mean condemning a religion, and remaining silent in the face of crime does not protect coexistence. It destroys it. A Muslim who believes in peace is not complicit in this crime, and a Christian who is killed is not a party to a conflict. The real party is one: armed extremism, which feeds on chaos, grows in a vacuum, and expands in silence. Any discourse that turns a humanitarian tragedy into a religious confrontation is a dangerous discourse, one that serves the perpetrator far more than it serves the victim. What Nigeria needs is not a fatwa, nor a slogan, nor mobilizing rhetoric. What it needs is the rule of law enforced, criminals held accountable, and civilians protected, regardless of their religion. This is not a Christian demand. It is a human one. Because the first casualty in any society that allows the killing of civilians is the very idea of coexistence itself, and silence is not neutrality. Silence is a choice, and choosing silence at the moment of crime is taking its side. These are testimonies and documented reports from international and foreign media outlets on the persecution of Christians in Nigeria, bearing witness to what has been described as a Christian genocide. In Washington, Congressman Riley M. Moore introduced a resolution in the U.S. House of Representatives condemning the ongoing persecution of Christians in Nigeria and supporting President Donald J. Trump's announcement to officially designate Nigeria as a country of particular concern. This bold decision is a clear message to the world that the United States will never turn a blind eye to our brothers and sisters in Christ who are being martyred for their faith. This resolution draws attention to the horrific persecution Christians face across Nigeria. 50,000 to 100,000 Christians have been murdered since 2009. At least 7,000 Christians have been killed this year alone, an average of 35 deaths each day. 19,000 churches have been destroyed. Data from Open Doors indicate that more Christians are killed every year in Nigeria than the rest of the world combined. Fox News reported, according to the international watchdog group Open Doors, nearly 70% of all Christians killed for their faith worldwide last year were in Nigeria. The group warns that Boko Haram, Islamic State West Africa Province, ISWAP, and Fulani militant herders are responsible for most of the bloodshed, often targeting Christian farmers in the country's middle belt. Rights organizations estimate that thousands of believers are murdered every year, while countless others are forced to flee. AP News reported that attacks on churches in Kaduna State led to the abduction of dozens of worshippers, events that drew international criticism over the authorities' response and their failure to protect civilians, particularly Christians, during religious celebrations. According to Open Doors' World Watch List 2026, Nigeria accounts for approximately 72% of Christians killed worldwide for their faith. Out of the total deaths recorded in 50 countries between October 2024 and September 2025.
A tashi a boko, 'yan mata ku je ku yi aure, zan maimaita wannan magana har yau.
Nigeria's silent slaughter. What is unfolding in Nigeria is not random violence, nor an ancient tribal conflict, and not a religious war between communities. According to multiple international reports, Nigeria is witnessing systematic attacks against civilians, with Christian communities bearing a disproportionate share of the violence. Churches, villages, and civilian targets have been repeatedly attacked over more than a decade, in what analysts describe as a clear and recurring pattern. On April 8, 2012, Easter Sunday, a car bomb exploded inside a church in the city of Kaduna, killing dozens of worshippers during Mass. Just 2 months later, in June 2012, 3 additional churches in Kaduna State were bombed during religious services, leaving dozens dead and hundreds wounded. In March 2013, a suicide bombing struck a bus station in Kano, targeting Christian passengers traveling south. Once again, civilians were killed, and accountability remained limited. Between 2016 and 2018, the nature of the violence shifted. Armed militias began launching coordinated nighttime attacks on Christian villages across Nigeria's Middle Belt. Entire communities were surrounded, homes and farms burned, men killed, and children left orphaned by morning. From 2020 to 2025, the violence did not subside. Instead, it became less visible and more persistent. Reports documented the kidnapping of students, the killing of pastors, and the displacement of entire Christian communities, forcing thousands to flee their homes. On December 25, 2020, Christmas night, Boko Haram militants attacked the Christian village of Pemi in Nigeria's Borno state. Christians were killed, a church was burned, and local men were abducted. In January 2025, villages around Chibok, including Njila, Banzir, Shikarkir. One of the deadliest incidents occurred in June 2025, when an estimated 100 to 200 Christians were killed in an attack on the village of Yelwata in central Nigeria. Later that year, in November 2025, more than 300 students and teachers were kidnapped from a Catholic school in Niger State, one of the largest mass abductions in the country's history. The violence continued into early 2026, when gunmen attacked churches in Kaduna State, abducting more than 160 worshippers during Mass. Despite the scale and duration of the attacks, international response has remained limited. There have been no sustained emergency summits, no coordinated sanctions proportional to the scale of the violence, and little long-term international pressure. Human rights advocates argue that the situation in Nigeria raises difficult questions about global standards of protection and accountability, because, as they warn, silence is not neutrality. In Nigeria, silence is costing lives.
What you've just seen is not a series of isolated incidents, but a long pattern of violence that has cost thousands of Christians their lives in Nigeria. The question now is how long this will continue, and who will act to stop it. Former U.S. President Donald Trump said that Christians in Nigeria are facing what he described as an existential threat, accusing Islamic extremist groups of carrying out mass killings against Christian communities. Trump announced the designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern for religious freedom, a move that opens the door to potential sanctions, including restrictions on non-humanitarian aid and other punitive measures if what he described as persecution continues. In November 2025, Trump escalated his rhetoric, threatening to cut all U.S. aid to Nigeria and stating that he had instructed the U.S. Department of Defense to prepare for possible military action if attacks against Christians did not stop. Trump said that any intervention, if carried out, would be swift and forceful, targeting what he called Islamic terrorists, and added that the United States could deploy ground forces or conduct airstrikes if the Nigerian government failed to halt the violence. On December 25, 2025, the United States announced it had carried out airstrikes in northwestern Nigeria, targeting Islamic State-linked militants. The Trump administration said the strikes were connected to ongoing attacks against Christian communities and followed repeated warnings over continued violence. Amid rapidly unfolding developments and rising regional tensions, attention is now focused on the implications of the military strike, its political and strategic messages, and the potential impact on the balance of power and future escalation. To discuss these developments, we are joined from Egypt by Jilan Gaber, journalist and writer, and a member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Can what is happening be described as ethnic cleansing, or even genocide? How are freedom of belief and basic human rights being violated amid this conflict?
The situation in Nigeria shows us that those most affected are the people, the government, and the Nigerian state itself. They are the first to be harmed because the reputation of this country is that it does not grant its citizens their rights. So how can a country that is a member of the United Nations, with citizens it must protect, whether in terms of security, economy, or society, violate freedoms and be described as engaging in destruction and human extermination? This does not justify, in the eyes of the world, providing aid, investments, or even a future for this country, as there is clear instability, a violation of human rights, a violation of citizens' freedoms, whether in religious beliefs or even in daily life, regardless of their sect, denomination, or even beliefs. All of this casts doubt on the state's capabilities and destroys any hope for citizens dreaming of a better tomorrow. It also makes anyone observing the situation or the assassinations from the outside decide to stay away from this country and not to invest their money there, even though it has potential and great hopes for investment. It is a country rich in its location and its future, but unfortunately, instability destroys any hopes for investment. The citizen has lost trust between himself and the Nigerian state because he finds that every day brings worse, not better. There are no clear efforts from the state, visible to the public, indicating that tomorrow there will be social reconciliation, political reconciliation, or even punishment for those who carry out the assassinations, whether they are from a terrorist group or Boko Haram, or whatever these groups may be that pose a threat to the Nigerian citizen. There is not even clear reward or punishment in domestic or international law. The situation is mixed. The scene is confusing and also frightening for the future of Nigeria.
Our sincere thanks to our guest, Jilan Gaber, journalist, writer, and a member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs, for her insight and contribution to this discussion. In Nigeria, Christianity is not practiced in silence. It is lived with courage. Every prayer carries fear, and every Mass holds the possibility that worshipers may not return home. And yet, churches are still full. Faith is still alive, despite the threats, despite the blood, despite the silence. Because Christians in Nigeria have learned that true faith is not born in safety. It grows under persecution.